It's 2 o'clock. This is a Sky News special. I'm Yalda Hakim, live from Beirut, as British nationals are told to leave Lebanon immediately. Today, Israel hit back against Hezbollah after missiles targeted the Mossad headquarters in Tel Aviv for the first time ever.
The evidence is, the growing evidence is, that many civilians and the areas that they're living in and working in are being seriously impacted.
We'll hear from the civilians caught up in the conflict on both sides of the border, now hunkering down or trying to escape. With the region on the edge, world leaders are calling for calm as they meet in New York. But is anyone listening? Good afternoon. I'm Yalda Hakim, live from Beirut. And this is today a country being described as one on the brink of catastrophe. The fear is that Lebanon could soon be transformed into another Gaza. The health ministry today has told me that the death toll has now reached 700 people, and that does include women and children. Hundreds of thousands are on the move and escaping bombardment. World leaders are warning that this conflict could soon engulf the entire region, and there is a lot of concern about where this could go. This week, there's been a huge increase in thermal activity in southern Lebanon as Israel conducts airstrikes across the border. Hezbollah have been doing the same with a major rocket attack against the Mossad in Tel Aviv earlier today. We have teams reporting across the region. John Sparks is in southern Beirut for us. Our special correspondent Alex Crawford is on the ground in southern Lebanon. And in Israel, our security and defence editor Deborah Haynes is in Tel Aviv for us. And our Middle East correspondent Alistair Bunkle is in Haifa in the north. Let's begin in Tel Aviv now, where, as we've been reporting, Hezbollah has fired a missile deep into Israel, targeting the Mossad headquarters near the country's economic capital. And that's where Deborah joins us from now. And Deborah, as we've been reporting, it is deeper than we've ever seen. And of course, the David Sling swung into action, but Israel has responded and responded hard.
Yes, and that air defence system managed to protect this city from that missile that was fired. But you can probably see behind me, I'm on the promenade by the seafront. It's usually much busier here on an afternoon in the week. And the city itself, just I've been told, is a lot quieter than normal, a sign of the concern that this was just an opening salvo. It's the deepest that Hezbollah has fired into Israel, and it's being viewed as a warning. Some say they've been surprised that Hezbollah didn't try this sooner, maybe an indication of their capability having been deeply eroded. Others say that maybe this is just a signal, a message to say this is what we can do. If you continue your offensive into Lebanon, then we will go further and do more.
Yeah, but Deborah, despite this warning shot that's been sent, it doesn't seem like Israel is going to back down.
Absolutely not. And actually, I was talking to a former head of the Israeli air defense system, which is this state-of-the-art, multi-layered shield that has protected this country from rockets and missiles and drone strikes from the north, from the south over the past year. And he said that he believes that there will be further offences into Lebanon, and even if that prompts a greater retaliation from Hezbollah or from Iran, then Israel is ready to defend itself.
Deborah, thank you so much for bringing us up to date on the situation there. Well, as we've been reporting, Israeli warplanes hit Lebanon again today, and I spoke to the health minister who told me and confirmed that the death toll has now risen to 700. He said hundreds of thousands of people are on the move trying to escape the bombardment. Our special correspondent Alex Crawford is near Tyre in southern Lebanon with this report.
Well, let me show you what we are finding as a result of the Israeli airstrikes all round here. A lot of the road along the main coastal highway, as well as off the road, is the evidence of all this pounding which this area has been subjected to for the best part of 2-3 days. Huge craters we're finding. The Israeli forces say that they are targeting Hezbollah positions, commanders and fighters, but the evidence is, the growing evidence is, that many civilians and the areas that they're living in and working in are being seriously impacted. Another bloody day in Lebanon. The Israeli airstrikes just keep on coming. 2 more strikes in Lebanon's capital, the 3rd time in 5 days that Beirut's been hit. The Israeli forces said they targeted the head of Hezbollah's missiles and rockets unit, Mohammed Kabisi, and other commanders, although this wasn't immediately confirmed by the militants. This area is the heartland of Hezbollah in the capital, but it's a crowded population hub too. South of the country got pounded again. They've been non-stop. Oh, there's another one.
We witnessed the airstrikes throughout the day. It's been relentless. The Israeli force promised to accelerate their offensive, and they're holding good on that vow. The desperate rush to get out of the line of fire means the humanitarian crisis here is growing and growing. My family have no money. We've got nothing, Fatima told us. How are we going to survive? We've lost everything. Like many here, her home was bombed and people have been scrambling to get basic supplies. The emergency workers are overwhelmed, struggling to cope with scarce resources and a sudden spike in the numbers who've been forced out of their homes, on top of those who fled over the past year of cross-border exchanges.
Half of the IDPs people, they slept in the garden, on the beach, without any tent, any cover, any blanket, in the streets and in their cars. For that's it, it's a disaster. And you see that when you see the eyes of the babies and the woman, it's really.
The Israeli forces hit east of the country too, the Bekaa Valley. They say they're targeting Hezbollah weapons stores and fighters hiding in residential areas. But amongst the dead in the Bekaa Valley was a young mother who worked for UNHCR. She and her young son were killed when an airstrike hit their home. Her husband and second child survived but are critical. It's been a terrifying few days for Lebanon and one of the nation's worst weeks in nearly a year, with a titanic wave of people moving out of the south and still moving. We were among the huge displacement and saw the constant airstrikes either side of the main coastal highway as people tried to flee. The astonishing huge movement of the Lebanese population from the south comes on the back of nearly a year of Israel saying it wants to create a buffer zone so Hezbollah cannot fire into its northern communities. Hezbollah's linked its attacks on Israel since last October to a Gaza ceasefire, and with the Israeli forces vowing to increase their onslaught on the militants, Lebanon looks set for a very rough period ahead. Alex Crawford, Sky News, entire southern Lebanon.
Well, the Prime Minister has told Britons in Lebanon to leave immediately and deployed around 700 UK troops to the region in case an emergency evacuation is needed. Well, the extra resources are being sent to Cyprus. They will join several hundred personnel already stationed on the island at RAF Akrotiri. Sir Keir Starmer said it's important British nationals hear his message to leave.
I have a very important message for British nationals in Lebanon, which is the time to leave is now. The contingency plans are being ramped up, but don't wait for those. There are still commercial flights. It's very important that they hear my message, which is to leave and to leave immediately.
Keir Starmer there. Well, some British nationals are now trying to leave. Our international correspondent John Sparks has been speaking to one man due to fly out today. Have a listen.
I come from south, so it's very risky, and around my house has been hit here and there. Yeah, so I have to leave. The airlines, they cancel all flight apart from Middle East, and Middle East is go fully booked. I'm traveling because I have to, but all my family, they're still there in south. So it's very sad and nothing we can do, actually. We have to just call them and try to see how they're doing.
Have you been down there? Have you been to your home village?
I've been back in South Lebanon, where I come from.
Were you there when the bombing started?
Yes.
What did you see? What did you experience?
Well, explosion everywhere. It's just been hitting, and I can hear them all day, all night long. Actually, since 2 days, we have to, myself and some part of member of my family, we have to escape from south toward Beirut.
John Sparks speaking to some people trying to evacuate. Well, Hezbollah has again launched dozens of rockets into northern Israel today, injuring several people and setting a home on fire. Israel has already evacuated an area over 2 miles from the border with Lebanon and says its key war aim is to return more than 80,000 people back to their homes. Well, many are still living in displacement centres, including in the northern city of Haifa. Our Middle East correspondent Alistair Bunkle is there for us. And Ali, we've been talking a lot about this. I mean, Israel has made it clear it wants its citizens to return back home.
Israel has been very clear about its objectives, and it seems determined to achieve them, whatever the cost. On October the 8th, the day after the Hamas attacks on Israel, Hezbollah started firing rockets into Israel. Almost every day since, there has been an exchange of fire across the border. Hezbollah rockets and drones and Israeli airstrikes into Lebanon. But in the last week, that has increased in intensity and in range. And where I am now, Haifa, has been a major target for Hezbollah. We have witnessed multiple waves of missiles fired towards this area and the missile defense systems intercepting them over the city and over the Mediterranean Sea. The residents of Haifa and the surrounding area are now living under strict restrictions. Schools are closed, many businesses are shut, and people have been told to stay close to bomb shelters. We visited the largest hospital in northern Israel, which is currently on high alert and which has spent the best part of the last 2 decades preparing for this war. Hezbollah is continuing to fire missiles into northern Israel. Not as many as it probably could, but still defying Israeli strikes on its territory. One missile hit a supermarket in an Arab-Israeli town. Nobody was hurt.
I heard the sirens from my house, and suddenly they said that Jad Market, it's this supermarket which belongs to a friend of mine, had been hit. I came here immediately to see what had happened. And then I saw this hole behind me that opened up inside a wall. And from down there's a hole in the ground. That's as a result of the shockwave of the rocket or its warhead.
Benjamin Netanyahu has said Israel won't back down.
We will continue to hit Hezbollah. And I say to the people of Lebanon, our war is not with you. Our war is with Hezbollah. Nasrallah is leading you to the brink of the abyss. I told you yesterday to evacuate the houses where he put a missile in the living room and a rocket in the garage. The one who has a missile in his living room and a rocket in his garage will not have a home. But I tell you another thing. He causes your country to be in danger. Free yourself from the grip of Hezbollah.
An Israeli reserve soldier was injured in another attack. He was brought to hospital in Haifa, conscious and talking. 3 floors below ground is the fortified hospital that they built in an underground car park after the last Lebanon war in 2006. It is now up and running as the situation worsens here in the north.
We are prepared. We have a lot of operating rooms, and our staff is very well trained for taking care of trauma patients. We are a high-level trauma center, one of the bigger, I think the biggest in Israel, of course in the north. So we are very well prepared.
In case of emergency, it will say what's going on.
The operations room monitors video feeds from around the region as air raid sirens warn of incoming missiles. In parking bays, the patients have little privacy, but do have the security of a complex that is bomb-proof and can be sealed to protect against chemical and biological attacks. So they've moved a lot of the patients that were above ground, below ground for safety, and also a lot of patients that were in hospitals around the region, around northern Israel. And just look how busy it is. This is one road that runs through what was the underground car park, now full of beds, patients, doctors, nurses. And they say they're only operating at half capacity. Their worst case scenario is missiles hitting Haifa every 4 to 5 minutes. This underground hospital is itself a symbol of the inevitable. It was built after one war with Hezbollah, with the certainty that one day another would break out. That day has now come. Alistair Bunkle, Sky News in Haifa.
Well, it's been just under a year since the conflict began. Israel's military are now fighting on 3 fronts, in Gaza, the West Bank and in Lebanon. But can they sustain it? And could a ground invasion in Lebanon be next? Our defence and security analyst, Professor Michael Clark, has been assessing the next stage in the conflict.
The conflict in Gaza always had the capacity to spread to other areas, and it looks to be doing just that. We all wondered whether the Israeli Defense Forces, the IDF, could sustain a potentially 3-front war in Gaza, the West Bank, and against Hezbollah in Lebanon. Well, now it looks as if the IDF is almost provoking a wider war on the assumption that Hamas's 7th of October attack puts Israel's very existence on the line. So perhaps the time has come, thinks the Israeli government, to deal with all of our enemies decisively. Israel has been launching hundreds of airstrikes into Lebanon. Nasser picked up massive upticks in thermal activity. Hezbollah have responded with strikes of their own. They know that if they fire off enough of their hundreds of thousands of rockets at once, they can simply overwhelm Israel's defensive shield. And that includes today, where Hezbollah have sent ballistic missiles targeting Tel Aviv. Now, Sky's data and forensics team have verified these images. The missiles were intercepted, but this is a big and important target. But Hezbollah have so far been holding back in their responses. Their ground force capability is said to be between 20 and 50,000 or more. They're very well armed, much stronger than Hamas, and they've got this massive force of rockets. So why do they hold back? Probably because their most important orders come from Tehran, and also because the Iranians regard Hezbollah's constant rocket threat to Israel as a deterrent against Israel hitting them directly in Iran. But the Israelis certainly aren't holding back now. Their offensives have ramped up weekly since Hezbollah's 27th of July rocket attack, probably a misfire or a targeting mistake, on the Druze school at Major Shams on the Golan Heights. I suspect the IDF is trying to frustrate or forestall the use of Hezbollah's massive rocket stockpile. And Israel is working through extensive air attacks on Hezbollah positions, activating the exploding pages in the pockets and homes of Hezbollah members, particularly targeting Hezbollah people like these, the top branches of Hezbollah's command structure, recently killed in Israeli attacks. Further into the inner workings of the group, many of Hezbollah's top commanders have also been killed. Now, these don't look to me like just targets of opportunity. They seem to have decided to work through their Hezbollah list from the top down, stripping out all of the senior leaders under Hassan Nasrallah. Whatever Hezbollah tries to do next, it'll be struggling to maintain any sort of command coherence. Meanwhile, Israel continues to demand the full implementation of UN Security Council Resolution 1701, adopted in 2006. It's designed to create a demilitarized buffer zone between Hezbollah forces and the Israeli border. As Israel keeps saying to the UN, if you don't implement your own resolution properly, we will do it for you. So what's next? Well, the IDF might be bluffing to frighten Hezbollah back north of the Litani River, or they might mean it. A ground invasion of southern Lebanon, again, officially to police their own buffer zone, but perhaps to take on Hezbollah once and for all, and yet avoid the rocket storm that remains a clear possibility. Either way, it's high risk all round. This offensive really began on the 27th of July in the Golan Heights. It's clearly got a way to run yet, and it's getting more dangerous by the day.
Professor Michael Clark there. Well, just over a week has passed since Lebanon was caught off guard as communications devices exploded across the country. Thousands were wounded and dozens killed in the blast. The number of dead has risen sharply in the days since as Israel ramps up its aerial bombardment. Earlier today, I sat down with the health minister of this country, Dr. Firas Abiad, to find out how the country is coping with the attacks. Doctor, could you give us an update on the latest numbers and situation here in Lebanon?
In the past week, we have seen an unprecedented number of casualties from the consecutive attacks that occurred on Lebanon. The total number of those who were killed is around more than 700. The total number of those who have been injured is almost 5,000 individuals. The vast majority of those people are civilians, including almost around 160 women and children that have been involved. There is also a large number of them who are healthcare workers, or whether killed or whether injured. More than 20 ambulances or firefighting machines were also targeted. Monday is a singularity because it is the largest number of casualties of people who were killed in a single day, I think, since the Lebanese civil war.
We're also seeing many people fleeing the area, thousands. Yes. Are you able to give us some numbers as to how many?
Yeah, so yesterday on Monday when we were trying to evacuate especially wounded to hospitals outside the areas that were targeted, we were unable because the roads were completely blocked with people. You know, Israel wanted to create this state of panic and terror among civilian population to provoke a mass exodus, and unfortunately, this is what happened.
The foreign minister is saying that he understands almost 500,000 people are displaced now?
This is our estimation. This is still not confirmed. We have in the shelters, now it's being reported that we have almost 50,000. And we know that people are in shelters, but based on these estimates, yes, I can see how, you know, the estimate is that we will reach easily that number.
Help us understand the state of the hospitals, because they were already overwhelmed.
If indeed we see a continuation, then yes, I can see how the health system is overwhelmed. Actually, I don't think any health system can be prepared to this level of carnage.
Doctor, do you think that Hezbollah also needs to be reined in? Because that is what Israel is saying, that they have had to deal with almost a year of rockets and their citizens being forced out of the border areas.
I think that everybody needs to be reined in, including Hezbollah. But I think that Hezbollah was very clear. And it said that if there is a ceasefire in Gaza, that they will cease their activities. And I think that if this is their claim, let's remove the excuse that they have, and that is that the carnage in Gaza is continuing. Let's start with a ceasefire and then take it from there. And I think this is what everybody has been calling for, including the Prime Minister in the UK. I heard him yesterday during the Labour conference mention a ceasefire in Gaza. I think this is something that I think the international community, everyone except one particular party, who is clearly not interested in any ceasefire. It's only interested for further escalation in its actions.
Doctor, thank you so much for your time. Lebanon's health minister speaking to me there a little earlier. Well, earlier you also heard the British Prime Minister Keir Starmer saying the conflict here would be high on the agenda as he meets with other world leaders at the UN General Assembly. Well, let's go straight to our international affairs editor, Dominique Weighorn, who joins us now. And Dom, world leaders are desperately trying to de-escalate the situation. The question is anyone in this region listening?
Yeah, I mean, I think where we are at the moment at the UN, Yalda, is at the stage of hand-wringing, mutual recrimination, and not the kind of urgent diplomatic intervention that we might expect from the escalating situation where you are. We heard from Antonio Guterres, the UN Secretary-General, who's warned that Lebanon could become a second Gaza. He says that what's happening there could engulf the entire region. And I think that's the level of concern. A lot of concern we've heard here, but nothing much really in the terms of that kind of diplomatic intervention. We're not seeing shuttle diplomacy. We're not seeing the American Secretary of State flying out to the region trying to intervene. We've heard allegations, Turkey and Iran saying Israel's involved in genocide and annihilation, and Israel hitting back, saying this is all Hezbollah's fault because they attacked first on October the 8th. So we are going to have a UN Security Council meeting tonight at 6 o'clock. It's taken 3 days for that to be convened, and in those 3 days, obviously, things have gone from bad to worse in the region, and this all follows yesterday's speech by President Biden, which frankly seemed rather flat in tone and also wasn't as urgent as you might expect, given where things are heading rapidly where you are. This is my report from here last night on the eve of what could be another day of very busy diplomatic activity here in New York. It was not the last speech Joe Biden would have wanted to give at the UN. No high note to end on as he arrived in New York, just swirling crises threatening his legacy overseas. Most of all, conflict escalating by the minute in the Middle East.
Full-scale war is not in anyone's interest. Even if the situation has escalated, a diplomatic solution is still possible.
With wars in Ukraine, Sudan, Gaza and now Lebanon raging, the optimistic note Joe Biden tried to strike may to many sound discordant.
Every age faces its challenges. I saw it as a young man. I see it today. But we are stronger than we think. We're stronger together than alone. And what the people call impossible is just an illusion.
Are you concerned about Lebanon?
Sorry, got to keep going.
How worried should we be about Lebanon? Any message today? Well, how worried should we be, sir, about Lebanon?
How concerned are you about Lebanon and Israel?
It is the crisis few seem to want to make worse by talking about here. We're told intense diplomacy is underway, but there is little evidence of that. Iran's president urged the world to intervene and restrain Israel.
It is imperative that the international community should immediately stop the violence and bring about a permanent ceasefire in Gaza and bring an end to the desperate barbarism of Israel in Lebanon before it engulfs the region and the world. Israel has been defeated in Gaza, and no amount of barbaric violence can restore its myth of invincibility.
Increasingly isolated here, Israel's ambassador insists his country is acting in self-defense.
We are determined to protect the civilians of Israel. We prefer a diplomatic solution. If it's not working, we are using other methods to show to the other side that we mean business.
There is little doubt that world leaders gathered here are deeply worried about events in the Middle East, but there's less sign of the kind of diplomatic intervention required to defuse it. While events in the region are moving quickly, the wheels of diplomacy here are grinding more slowly. Divided and dysfunctional, the UN is not the place it used to be to end conflicts. The fear is events in the region are moving far quicker than efforts to contain them. Dominic Waghorn, Sky News, New York.
Well, in a sign of just how much this conflict is escalating, in the past half an hour, the Israeli Defense Force have called up 2 reservist brigades to their northern border with Lebanon. Hundreds of thousands are fleeing the fighting here as the conflict intensifies. Many foreign nationals, including Britons, have been advised to leave the country. Well, our international correspondent John Sparks is just south of Beirut in the town of Gia. And John, I mean, things are intensifying. We're just hearing the last half hour that the IDF have called for 2 reservist brigades to move up to the northern border.
Yeah, you know what? I mean, people in the south, certainly, and people all over Lebanon, including here in the capital, are going to feel that. They're going to worry about it. We are about 20 kilometers south of the capital on the main highway heading to southern Lebanon, and I am standing at the premises of a Range Rover repair shop, or what was a Range Rover repair shop. Have a look at that huge crater from an Israeli missile has blown the repair shop apart. Not sure what the obvious military value of this target was, but you know what? It means that this war, both physically and psychologically, is coming to the suburbs of Beirut. Everybody is feeling it. Let's just pivot around here. You can see the remains of a police vehicle, not much left there. But you know what? This war is coming home to people. And that means British nationals as well. I've just finished an interview with a mother of two called Mahassan Al-Dada. She's married to a Lebanese. The bombing kept her up all last night. She has decided that she wants to go for the benefit of her children. Problem is, she can't get a ticket out. Most of the major airlines have stopped flying into and out of Beirut. There's a couple of airlines left, Middle Eastern Airlines, the main airline that flies in and out of Beirut. They can offer her a ticket on October the 8th. That's 2 weeks away. And you know what? Right now, 2 weeks feels like an eternity in Lebanon. She's been on to the advice line that the Foreign and Commonwealth Office have for people in her position, and they said, keep trying to book a ticket. But you know what? She's afraid, and she's also really frustrated.
Yeah, indeed, very much so. John, thank you so much. That was John Sparks there on the outskirts of the capital, Beirut, looking at that devastation as a result of an airstrike. And that really is the situation, certainly in the south of the country, where the authorities here are describing the situation as catastrophic. Hundreds of thousands of people are now on the move, trying to escape the violence, trying to escape the aerial bombardment, and their homes have been turned into rubble. I spoke a little earlier to the health minister, who told me that the numbers have now reached 700 dead, and that includes women and children. He said the vast majority of the dead are civilians, and that number is still not accurate because he says many people are under the rubble and they're not able to get to them. This is a country now that is terrified. There is a level of anxiety here in the air as people wait to see what happens next. And we've been hearing from world leaders at the UN General Assembly calling for calm, calling for restraint, and calling for the situation here to be de-escalated. But the question that we continue to ask those in the region, are they listening, and are they going to pull this situation away from the brink? We will continue to follow all of the developments here from the region, but from the team and I, goodbye for now.